Hello, everyone. My name is Stephen Chan, for those who don't know me, and I'm the president of SCAR. Welcome to this closing ceremony of our SCAR 2020 online meeting. If we were holding our meeting in Australia, which of course, under other circumstances we would have been, I would have opened by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we're meeting. Our meeting is, however, global and electronic. And therefore, what I'd like to do is, in fact, acknowledge all the traditional custodians of lands and seas across the world and the tremendous value Indigenous knowledge has for our understanding of our place in nature. Like I did in the opening ceremony, I'd also like to recognize the distance we have to go to ensure that scientific endeavor and SCAR are fully equitable and free from systemic bias. This is something that we'll be working on and we've heard about during the course of our meeting. Over the last week, we've had a meeting that has been different in several ways. We've missed seeing our colleagues in person, but at the same time, we've had a tremendous and rich opportunity to explore ways in which we might meet even when we're unable to actually see each other physically. The implications are profound. We're not only facing a short-term crisis at the moment in terms of this global pandemic, but behind that lies a much larger long-term crisis, and that is the climate crisis. There's huge responsibility for us as scientists working in the Antarctic, one of the regions that's changing really quickly in places, to acknowledge that we're facing this climate crisis and to do something about it now. And as a consequence of the changes we've had to make now, we've seen how many options are available to us to do things in a different way. In saying that, I would like to recognize that perhaps the profligacy of current and past generations with carbon has made it much more difficult for the younger portion of the current generation and future generations to enjoy the kinds of conferences that we have in the past. And therefore, there's an even larger onus on us now to act than there ever has been before. Over the last week, we've heard a great deal of very interesting research, outcomes, and fantastic science. It's been a tremendous pleasure to be part of this meeting, albeit in a somewhat distant fashion. We've heard some of the very best science that's coming out, and we've heard some of the great stories of how we may adapt to our current conditions. Make no mistake, the current coronavirus pandemic, and in particular our response to it, especially the response to keep the virus out of Antarctica, does pose significant threat to long-term research in the Antarctic. And I know that many national Antarctic programs are working with their scientific communities to work out how best we can actually address both questions, ensuring that the people working in the Antarctic remain safe, while at the same time recognizing that long-term data sets are very essential for understanding what may take place in our world into the future. Because we've had a virus draw our attention very carefully does not mean the ice sheets have stopped their change. And this is something that I think we should all recognize. Much of the research that you've heard has been groundbreaking, innovative, and certainly representative of what it is that's best about SCAR. That is, we're a community, an organization that facilitates science in, from, and about Antarctica and the Southern Ocean. And that we take the outcomes of the science and make sure that where relevant, we provide the information that we've gathered in a digestible form to policymakers. Of course, not all of our science is policy ready, and nor should it be. Some of our science is simply about how the world works, or perhaps about our place in the universe. And over the past week, we've heard a great deal about that. It's really been a pleasure and a thrill to be part of this meeting. We recognize there may have been other advantages to meeting in Hobart, but at the same time, we've managed to see each other. We've managed to have a very good time online, listening to each other's presentations and work, and engaging in ways we might never have thought possible. So I'm not going to thank everybody, but I would just like to recognize that there's been tremendous effort from across the community, from the organizers, from those who were ready to welcome us to Melbourne, from our supporters in the Antarctic Division and in the Australian Academy of Science, and through the organizers, Leishman Associates, and our incredible SCAR Secretariat. We will have some formal thanks at the end, but I would, as president, simply like to recognize that the success of this meeting has been due to everyone, including our participants and those who stepped away from things that they had to do immediately now, missing some sessions and logging into our YouTube channels just to have a look at those. And of course, this meeting will go on in some ways. There are a few more sessions after this closing one. And of course, we do have a channel where you can revisit much of what we've done. So with those few remarks, I would very much like now to hand over to our Vice President for Science, Catherine Rists, who has a few more remarks to make. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Stephen. My name is Catherine Rists, and I am SCAR Vice President, conveners, chairs, and above all, the organization team that made a wonderful job, and especially Chandrika Nath, who was the core of this organization. Time zones made it difficult to attend everything. But the nice thing is that it is all recorded and accessible on the YouTube channel, although of course you cannot ask questions that way. And this is a major difference compared to an in-person meeting. There is a huge amount of scientific material that keeps being available and will be in the next months, years. Not only the presentations, but also all the material that people uploaded and that you can see at any time you want. That means that not only those who had planned to go to Hobart will benefit from the meeting, but also all the community. It is, for instance, useful for those who have difficulties to find support for their travel, but it is very important as we want all to reduce carbon emission. And we know that it is the only way, one of the ways is to reduce our travels. By the way, the registration number at the online meeting was about the double of the one we had expected for the Hobart meeting. We have learned a lot, but we also think that your experience is very important. This is why we plan to conduct a small survey about it, because in the future, I hope that in-person meeting will be possible again, but I think we must consider hybrid meetings. And the experience we gained last week and all the answers you can and the feeling you had about it that you will send us in the review, in the survey, will be very useful to organize hybrid meetings in the future. And now we will move to the medal award part and let Ravi present the first one.
Thank you, Kat. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. I am Ravichandran, Vice President of SCAR, to look after capacity building, education, and training activities of SCAR. SCAR Medal for Education and Communication is awarded for excellence or innovation in and sustained commitment to communicating Antarctic research, making a significant contribution to educating the next generation of Antarctic researchers, or contributing to building new capacity in SCAR members. This medal was awarded since 2018. We thank all reviewers and participants for this award. This year's SCAR Medal for Education and Communication goes to Dr. Hugh Griffiths from British Antarctic Survey. Before I read out the citation, I take this opportunity in welcoming everyone to our next SCAR meeting in 2022, being hosted by India in Hyderabad, in a form to be determined by current experiences and learning melded with our deep experience of what has worked for previous meeting. Now, I will read out the citation. A specialist in polar marine biologist, Dr. Hugh Griffiths has maintained a commitment to science education and communication throughout his career. sharing the wonder of polar science, particularly his own field of marine biology, with the diverse audiences. He is an authentic and passionate advocate for making science understandable and available to everyone. He has demonstrated this commitment to educating future polar scientists via school visits and outreach events, connecting with the students of all ages and giving minority students contact with Antarctic researchers. His work with the policymakers has included participating in a UK Royal Society scheme where scientists shadow parliamentarians and co-educate to gain insight into how research findings can help inform policymaking. Dr. Griffiths is a great communicator via social media. As the lead editor of the International Pride in Polar Research Twitter feed, he has helped to change the narrative around diversity and inclusion in polar science, to raise awareness, change behaviors, and to bring the discussion into the open. By extending the reach of social media to minorities, he is educating vast audiences in polar sciences, as well as projecting an image of polar science is as inclusive and welcoming to future scientists. Congratulations, Dr. Griffiths. Now I invite him for share his views.
Thank you very much. And thank you to everybody at SCAR for this. It's a real surprise to get it. I didn't even know I was nominated. So this is a massive honor. And it's particularly important to me because my career has really been helped by my involvement in SCAR. And SCAR has, I've often described it as like a family. And it's very sad not to receive this in front of all the people I know would be there to celebrate with me afterwards in Hobart, but I know that they're there virtually. And I really appreciate getting this award, particularly because it is about communication and education. And I've been lucky enough to be able to meet some amazing young individuals and early career researchers who, some of them had never even considered a career in polar science before. And I think it's a really important part of our jobs, and something that SCAR can really play a role in, is to really share how amazing and important and fragile and vulnerable Antarctica is, and that we have an enormous responsibility to look after it for future generations. And not only sort of reaching out to people who are already interested in science, because I've been to schools where the head teacher has told me, we've brought you in to talk to these kids because statistically none of them will go to university. So it's not even a problem of getting these children interested in polar science for their future career. It's getting them interested in considering science at all as a career. And it's only through bringing in those parts of our audience that we can really engage with everybody about how important polar science is. And also the other part is through things like Pride in Polar Research, and before us there were women in polar science, and now there's minorities in polar science. We have to make sure that when we invite these people into polar science, that they really feel welcome. I've been very lucky in my career as a privileged white British male that actually being gay hasn't affected my career in an obvious way that I know about. But through SCAR, I've met individuals who really have been affected negatively by the impacts of being who they are and trying to work in what I consider to be a family. So it's our job as a family to make sure we educate ourselves on how best to make everybody feel welcome. And I really think that me receiving this award represents the countless other individuals who have worked with me on all of these different projects and continue to work on countless other amazing projects that will improve the diversity and inclusivity for everybody in polar science. Thank you.
Thanks, Hugh. My name is Gary Wilson, the SCAR Vice President for Administration, and I'd like to add my congratulations and thanks for the work that you do on behalf of SCAR, Hugh, and also my congratulations to the other winners that you'll hear about. So my task this evening is to award the SCAR Medal for International Coordination in 2020. Now, the SCAR Medal for International Coordination is awarded for outstanding and sustained contributions to international cooperation and partnerships. And the medal recognises people that have advanced SCAR's mission to initiate, facilitate, coordinate and encourage international research activity in the Antarctic region. And it's a great pleasure for me to be just trying to pull up the citation, which is not performing. It's all right, I have a paper copy of it. It's my great pleasure to be able to award this medal in 2020 to Carlotta Escutia. And Carlotta is someone whom I've had the experience of attending some of the meetings and being part of some of the activities that Carlotta has coordinated. So it really is a personal honor as well to award the medal to Carlotta. And I'll read the citation and then invite Carlotta to respond. Through her visionary co-leadership of SCAR's past Antarctic Ice Sheet Dynamics PACE program, and as a founding member and co-chief of its predecessor, Antarctic Climate Evolution, ACE, Dr. Carlotta Escutia has enabled fundamental discoveries and understanding of Antarctic ice sheet history and ice sheet behaviour as a consequence of global warming. She has been a driving force connecting SCAR and the International Ocean Discovery Programme, IODP, over the last 20 years. Her energetic, strategic, positive and diplomatic approach helping to successfully bring the scientific ocean drilling and Antarctic communities together. She has directly and indirectly helped build an international capability which is at the forefront of Antarctic climate science and led to the publication of more than 50 major papers and uptake of that science into policy-relevant Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, assessment reports. Carlotta has a special skill for bringing people and groups together in order to achieve strategically important Antarctic and Southern Ocean research. A major hallmark of her leadership is her mentorship of the next generation of Antarctic researchers and leaders. Her ability to foster early career scientists and to provide leadership opportunities for those in mid-career. Carlotta, congratulations on the award of the SCAR Medal for International Coordination 2020. And I invite you to respond.
Thank you, Gary. I am truly honored to be the recipient of this 2020 SCAR Medal for International Coordination. Me as Hugh did not know that I was nominated, so I also want to take this opportunity to thank my nominators and the nomination supporters, as well as everybody that was involved in the selection process. This is a very, very big surprise for me. However, this award recognizes a journey of initiating, promoting, and coordinating scientific research in Antarctica, like Gary said, which is a road that in no ways can be traveled alone. It requires really enthusiastic and committed scientists, students, technical support, also administration staff that work together to address common objectives and also pressing scientific questions that are of global significance. Therefore, what I must feel is gratitude for the extremely helpful, wonderfully productive and most of all personally rewarding collaborations that I have had the chance to have through my career. When I learned about the medal, I wanted to reflect about these collaborations really led to this award. And pivotal to this journey was Dr. Alan Cooper, with whom I started working in Antarctica as a postdoctoral fellow at the USGS Geological Survey in Menlo Park about 25 years ago, no less. And from the start, Alan urged me and gave me opportunities and guidance to take international science activities within SCAR and also in the ocean drilling program. I was new to Antarctica, so I was always convinced that he really was overestimating my capabilities. But I guess I kept going and not challenging it. Also important was the leadership team of the SCAR, Antarctic Offshore Stratigraphy program, ANTOSTRAT. Alan Cooper was in it, but also Peter Barrett, Phil O'Brien, Peter Webb, Giuliano Brancolini, and the late Peter Barker. They provided me with continuous encouragement, support, guidance, as I was taking more responsibility roles. These colleagues, I like to mention that they not only mentored me, for what I'm very thankful, but also a generation of Antarctic geoscientists who are now the leaders in their fields of expertise and also very active members of SCAR. So, you know, I hope that our generation has also been able to follow in their footsteps, to give opportunities and also providing skills and experience to the next generation of Antarctic scientists, so they can also be the next generation of SCAR leaders, and they can tackle the pressing global challenges that are to be addressed in Antarctica. Equally important have been many inspiring colleagues, postdocs, students that I have worked or interacted with my work in the SCAR, ANTOSTRAT, ACE, and PACE programs, but also during the planning and implementation of scientific drilling expeditions and research cruises to Antarctica. Also through the participation in SCAR and IODP committees and panels. Each of these activities really capture the essence of international and multidisciplinary cooperation, and that is really the DNA of SCAR. I really feel privileged to have enjoyed the interaction with so many bright and dedicated persons, very generous people, who understood the power and value and the rewards of collaboration in research. I would add, I would like to have the time to mention many of them, which of course I don't have the time, but I like to accept this medal on behalf of all these scientists who they stand with me in receiving this honor. I want to just take few seconds to also mention that this journey would not have been possible without the dedicated support of my family. My heartfelt thanks to Hans, who's my partner in both life and science, and our two daughters for their unflinching and continued support and encouragement through these very long trips, seasons in Antarctica, and so on. I want to finish so I thank you very much.
Thank you, Carlotta, and congratulations for this medal. Over a long and distinguished career, Dr. Barry Lyons has undertaken a range of research that is interdisciplinary and international in scope, based on strong collaboration and partnership, and demonstrating unsurpassed creativity and originality in design and execution. His major contributions were key to connecting Antarctica to global geochemical cycling, demonstrating that geochemical weathering in polar environments occurs at a rate equivalent to or greater than those in temperate regions. Previously, this issue was largely ignored because polar regions were considered too cold to foster high chemical weathering rates. His research interests are broad and have crossed scales from the geochemistry of dust particles to contributing to the state of Antarctic and Southern Ocean climate systems, and spans the range from lake geochemistry and their environmental history to geochemical hydrogeology and organic carbon in snowfall. These interests are best exemplified by his 26 years of involvement and leadership, serving as lead scientist for 11 years in the McMurdo Dry Valleys long-term ecological research program. his research having significantly advanced our understanding of how Antarctic terrestrial landscapes and ecosystems evolved and currently function. Dr. Lyons' impact on his field is exceptional, as judged by his commitment to the success and development of colleagues, co-workers, and students, mentoring 20 student graduate theses on Antarctic science topics. He is an excellent public speaker, and the knowledge and advancements in science produced by his research have had a wide societal impact in terms of policy and public awareness, including serving on the US delegation to the Antarctic Treaty consultative meetings. He has also contributed to SCAR's missions and objectives through a broad range of roles and activities, including as Chief Officer of the Geoscience Group from 2012 to 2016, and helping to initiate action groups on environmental contamination in Antarctica and the Pan-Antarctic Observations Network. He served on the steering committee of the 2014 SCAR Horizon Scan, and for nearly a decade on the SCAR Capacity Building Education and Training Committee. Congratulations, Dr. Lyons, and I'm really impressed by your career.
I was extremely surprised, humbled, and honored to learn that I had won this award this week. I want to first of all thank SCAR, the selection committee, and my letter writers, especially Andrew Fountain, for selecting me for this honor. As everyone knows, science is a collaborative activity, especially Antarctic science. So this award represents research, intellectual input, and hard work from a large number of colleagues, collaborators, and students over a very long period of time. And I would like to acknowledge their contributions to the work that I'm being honored for. I can't name everyone, but I would like to make some special thank yous. First of all, to Paul Majewski, who encouraged me to go to Antarctica with him in the early 1980s and turned me into an Antarctic scientist from an oceanographer as I was trained. I especially want to thank my McMurdo Dry Valley's LTER colleagues, of which I worked for 24 magical years in a magical place in the McMurdo Dry Valleys. I don't have the time to mention all of them, but I'm especially grateful to the late Bob Wharton, who involved me in the first LTER proposal, but also Diane McKnight, Diana Wall, Andrew Fountain, John Priskew, Peter Dorn, Ross Virginia, and Mike Gusev have been great colleagues over the years. I also want to thank Kathy and Sue Welsh and Chris Gardner from my group here at Ohio State, who've been involved with me through most of the LTER program. One of the many rewarding and joyful things about Antarctic research is its international scope. And I have greatly benefited from collaborations with many of my international colleagues over the last 30 years that I've met through SCAR. I want to especially make note of my New Zealand colleagues who were involved with the LTER program, and also the great experience I had with my Spanish colleagues during IGY. Finally, I would like to thank my students, BS, MS, and PhD students over the years who've inspired me with their hard work and their intellectual rigor. Finally, I would be remiss if I didn't thank the National Science Foundation Office of Polar Programs for their support over the years. I am deeply honored to have received this award and would like to thank everyone again very much.
Hello, my name is Jefferson Simões, and I'm the SCAR Vice President for Finances. My role here is to thank all that made this meeting possible. But before the thanks to specific people, I'd like to acknowledge the countless numbers who have suffered and are suffering during this pandemic. Several countries are still in the middle of this distress and grieving the great loss of lives. We had to adapt fast to this situation, and the fact that SCAR managed to organize this online open science conference in few months is a testimony of international cooperation and results from individuals and organizational efforts along the last 2 years. So we have an extended list of thanks. I'd like to thank first to Catherine Ritz, VP for Science, who has been working for over 2 years to deliver the SCAR 2020 Open Science Conference. The whole SCAR Secretariat, Joanna Gabel, Owen Griffin, Rosemary Nash, and Chandra Kanath, plus Matthew Dell, intern from Imperial College, who just joined for the meeting. The Association of Polar Early Career Science, APEX, have been invaluable with their support across all areas of the meeting, in moderating, chairing, and organizing live sections, text sessions, and many of the related events. They were also very involved in the planning of the original physical meeting. Particular thanks to Gabriela Roden, who has been helping SCAR behind the scenes to organize the live events. Thanks also to Gil Kakavo, Alice Oates, Lara Paris, Laesha Lobsher, and Caroline Harris. Recognize also the many others involved in the excellence, independently organized series of parallel sessions, which is still ongoing. By the way, they will run the Apex SCAR 2020 workshop on 11 to 13 August. The entire team from Leishman Associates, and in particular, Elena Stewart, Britton Lee, and Angela Cooper. Ian Robert Calder for his assistance and planning the events. Alice Oates for her help doing all preparation and doing the event. We would also like to thank our speakers, session conveners, and chairs for their hard work and time, particularly since the technology was new and they had put time into rehearsals as well as the session themselves. We would also like to thank the many hundreds of contribution authors who upload material, as well as the hundreds of participants who viewed and discussed the material. Finally, to acknowledge that this online meeting was based on excellent work put into the preparation of the physical meeting in Hobart that would also have been finished about now. The International Science Organized Committee, ISOC, and Local Organized Committee, LOC, the original hosts of the physical meeting in Hobart, on which this meeting has been based. The Australia Antarctic Division, the Tasmania State Government, and the Australia Academy of Science. All of the volunteers who continue to lead and participate in SCAR's groups and committees. And finally, yourselves, the audience. Thank you very much and stay safe. And now, I hand back to our SCAR president.
Thank you, Jefferson. Thank you for those remarks. I'd like to add my congratulations too to our medal winners for this year. Recognizing Valerie Masson-Delmotte, Carlotta Escutia, Hugh Griffiths, and Barry Lyons. Congratulations on your medals, richly deserved. Our meeting has come to an end now, at least the formal online parts of our meeting. And I think that it would be reasonable to say that despite the learning curve we've gone through, it's been a great success. Thanks to everybody who took part. Our next meeting is scheduled for India, as Ravi pointed out to you. We hope that we'll be able to have a meeting that takes place in a way that's novel, but novel again from this. We do look forward to meeting there, but we understand too that we now have the options of exploring how much impact we have through our meetings and in fact doing things in a very different way. SCAR is about coordinating and facilitating science. And that means it's all about facilitating science for our community. And our community is essentially one of volunteers. And just in closing, I'd like to take this opportunity to recognize the enormous amount of work that volunteers do for SCAR. There are many, many people behind the scenes that continue the work for SCAR, too numerous to name. But they do all of that on volunteer time. And that time is, of course, supported by someone, sometimes themselves at home, and sometimes by the organizations which employ them. And for those who've worked so diligently and so hard for SCAR over the years, I'd like to recognize both you and your organizations for all the contributions you've made. Had we been in Hobart, of course, we'd have a nice end of meeting function. People would be working their way home, and the SCAR delegates would be preparing to meet to take some decisions about how we can further support the volunteers that work so hard to coordinate and facilitate science in the Antarctic region. That's not possible, so we'll have our delegates meeting in another way. But I would like to say that on behalf of all the delegates, we really do appreciate the work all of you are doing and look forward to hearing about your tremendous science advances. Antarctic science is a global endeavor, and it's important for the globe. And that's a message I'd like to leave you with as I close this session. Our science is globally important and globally relevant. And into the future, it will become more so as our attention changes back to the climate crisis we're facing. So I wish you all well. I hope you have a safe and enjoyable rest of the year. I know it'll be tough for some of those who can't get to the Antarctic, but we have some options in front of us. And I'm perfectly convinced that the science that is the mainstay of modern society will provide us with some solutions to this crisis, as it has to others. The key will be for us to take up those solutions and not to ignore the evidence that is being produced by our scientific community. So with that, I call our meeting to a close. Thank you all for your attention and wish you well. Good night, good morning, goodbye, and good luck.